Hello, I am RM Francis and I'm the author of Ameles, Currents of Unmindfulness. This is a collection of horror stories out with Poe Girl Publishing. Great treat for Christmas. This story is called Caught. We knew he knew something. He'd tell us he'd never seen the man before. By a tree on a small bank overlooking the main paths, taking photographs with a mobile phone. Alone in the shade, the device held in front of him. He'd shaved his face and shaved his head that morning and wore dirty clothes plucked from the floor of his bedroom. He casually snapped at the view before him, saving the images in the phone's memory. Dog walkers with sensible raincoats and lightweight shoes, parents shouting, cooing, children running with imaginary creatures, imaginary coves and castles. A gang of young boys playing football. They stopped to stare every time the girls came past with their short skirt strut, a flick of hair, a quick bend and pose. Barks, jowls, jeers and cheers. The sunny area, full of green and glorious blossoms, was polluted with the picnic tourists and players. He sat away from this, with a finger clicking the trigger to snap and shoot. He did it each day and each night, sat in a quiet corner somewhere, confining moments to a single frame. At the corner of a crowded bar, watching the mating rituals and territorial displays. On the bus or the train, grabbing images of sleepy commuters in their TikTok life. On the footbridge over the motorway, zooming in and out of those going and those returning. He collected moments. He gathered glimpses of things. He archived them in the memory of a small chip, a tiny scrapbook of a voyeur. Through the early hours after midnight, he would upload the images into an archive on his computer. He held them in folders, marked by a date, and gave titles to each. He virtually fingered his way through each frame, carefully dissecting them, falling into them, covering every square millimetre with his stare. He slept for a short while, but only after the work was done. Every morning he wrote in his blog, a diary of the day before. He wrote it on a secured site where password access was required. He wrote it for himself. He read it to himself. He built a mass store of what his lens had seen and what he had grasped from the finished materials. He was talking to himself. And once that was complete, he picked up his clothes and put them on, picked up his phone and set out to a new place. Today was the park, a train ride away from his parents' house, then a short walk through the town, out into the old quarter. He took his place, trying to be invisible, then indiscriminately fired. He remained like this all day, changing the zoom from time to time, changing the angle he sat, changing the target of his lens, and again, indiscriminately firing. His parents were retired teachers. They roamed about the house, improving it. His father had spent his retirement so far gardening and sorting out the spare rooms and loft. His mother had changed the colour schemes, changed the furniture, washed and cleaned and perked up. On weekends, they got rid of their stuff at car boot sales. They'd hoarded a throng of nitbits over a 40-year marriage. Gifts, collections, medals and totems. Now they were clearing, wiping the slate clear in their later years. This was all they did and all they talked about. So while one was filing and filling in his own private catalogue, the others were burying theirs. He was quiet, had no friends or career. From time to time they would hit with pointed questions. You know Kenny, you were in Scouts with. He has some shifts at his place. He's done well, hasn't he, Kenny? He didn't take note. He'd spent his childhood evenings in a classroom, waiting for them to finish their loads. The words, "Why can't you be more like," rang through his head. He liked technology, cameras, computers. These worked and could be worked out. Things that worked one way only. Things that could be taken apart and put back together and still work. He collected pictures and wrote to himself. They were drawn to work, to constantly moving, to trying to grow. They were always growing out of things. In the park, he shot and stared, looking through the lens at the creatures playing at life. They act like humans, but he didn't know which side of the draft he fell. He was sure, part hope, part paranoia. He was sure of it. This was why he did what he did. He was collecting evidence, recording all he could see, day-to-day and night-to-night activities. He had to document it. Somewhere at some point in time there would be evidence. Somewhere at some time it would be needed. He caught with impartial commentary. He hid it in a private space, in a little nook on the internet, where one day it would be dug up and researched. He didn't speak about it. In the park, he moved himself around, capturing the whole conspiracy. Far away, close up, individuals, groups, every behaviour trapped in the lens's appetite. His aim, to leave no one, no time and no space unreported. It was the end of June, and after a week of rain-soaked days, it was finally summer. Everything was bright and green and warm. The smell of sugar, sun cream and cut grass. Every humanoid had come out to join the fun. He had his work cut out. The throng raced. Picnics were laid out. Games of frisbee and football. Dogs raged. Children howled. An insect chorus. He could hardly focus. In the swarm, one movement made him flinch. He woke from the constant camera. A man working his way up from the hill, one side of the park, through the jamboree, towards him. Slowly working his way between the people, up the slight slope towards the tree. Scruffy, with long matted hair and thick filthy beard. Baggy clothes, torn and soiled. Walking with a hobble, a slight twitch of the shoulder. With each step, every few yards, his face seemed to screw up, and he turned himself to check who might be following. He slowly came up. He stopped shooting. He froze. The scruffy man came within a few meters of him, turned his head, looked at him, smiled. It's in the meat, you know, Scruffy said. Put it in the meat. Keep it in control, you know, poison. It runs in blood down palace walls, small amounts here and there. You got a cigarette? He shook his head and shrugged. The man looked at him for a while, looked him dead in the eye, then coughed, looked down at the phone, raised his eyebrows and gave a chuckle. With a dirty grin, he nodded his head and moved on up the slope. He breathed hard and shivered slightly, then gathered his things and jumped up. He ran down the slope through the hordes and out to the park. He ran through the old quarter, back through the town and jumped onto the train. He rushed in, past his father who was sorting through a trunk in the hall. They exchanged a smile and a hello. Past his mother, painting the walls of the stairs. He went into his bedroom and shut the door. His parents did not bother him. Nothing much was different to a normal day. They carried on, sorting through and improving in their retirement. After an hour, he was at his desk, sorting through the photographs. He assessed every point of each image. With a suck of his teeth and a raised eyebrow, he checked every frame. It took hours, magnifying and clearing and changing the light, to view, to see more, to get closer. The scruffy man first appeared in the last third of the day's takes, at the back of a picture, behind several groups, just by the bandstand. He got several of the pictures around that moment onto the screen at the same time. He cleared them, played around with the light. He zoomed in. On the first image, he saw the man arched over, reaching out a shot, a strained look on his face. On the second, he saw the man's arm move backwards, a closed fist at the end of it, a smile on his face. In the third, he turned, looked directly at the camera, smiled. Not a smile, no, something like a smile. There was a raised eyebrow about it, something between grin and grimace. He'd tell us he'd never seen the man before.